Hello, everyone. On behalf of Library Makers, I would like to welcome you to the Tinkering Workshop with Ryan Jenkins. My name is Kelly Nimitz. I am a Youth Services Associate at Lincoln Township Public Library in Stevensville, Michigan. And I am also a member of the Events and Programs Committee of Library Makers. Library Makers is a community that connects and supports library staff from all over the country in libraries and big and small, who are all at different points in their maker journey. Whether you're just getting started or you have been making for many years, we welcome you to our online community. LibraryMakers.org has its own social platform where you can connect and get to know one another, share questions, ideas, and resources, enjoy blog posts on relevant topics, and peruse a video library of past events. Please note that today's event will be recorded. So before we get started, I'm going to launch a quick poll and you guys can answer and we can get to know everybody a little bit better. So let me see here. All right, so guys can go ahead and answer that when you get the chance. All right. All right. Hi, Stacy. Welcome. All righty. Let's see. So yep. So we got a few. Well, we got a pretty even mix of people from the Midwest and the West outside the USA. That's awesome. Well, we got most people from school libraries here. That's really great to hear, especially with working with STEAM programs, and a mix of rural and urban libraries. All right, that's really awesome to hear. Right. Well, no, the information like that is very helpful to us. So thank you so much. We encourage you, if you guys haven't joined Library Makers yet, or if you have already, be sure to complete your profile so that we can get to know you on there, and that way we can easily connect with you. And now I'm going to go ahead and introduce our presenter today and stop myself from talking. This is Ryan Jenkins. He is co-founder of the Wonderful Idea Company, and he just came out with his first book, The Tinkering Workshop: Explore, Invent, and Build Everyday Materials, 100 Hands-on STEAM Projects. So and he's going to talk with us a bit about his book, as well as we're going to do some fun hands-on projects. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share, mute myself, and let Ryan take over. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks so much, Kelly, and thanks so much to everyone for being here. I think we have even a few more people who are jumping in, and I know many others will be watching this recording later on. Just a couple things I wanted to say before we get started. I think that it's really important in this setting, online workshop, we all can be ourselves, be informal. I'm really happy if people have the cameras on, the mics unmuted, but if you don't feel to do that, or you're not in a place to do that, that's also totally fine. You can participate as it works for you and as it makes sense for you. It's also really helpful to use the chat function. You can also feel free to just jump in and ask a question or interrupt, but I know sometimes that's hard to find the exact right time. So if you have a question or something you want to add, you can type that in the chat. Yvonne will be the one to interrupt me and ask it, but that would be really helpful as well. So I wanted to just, yeah, as a little introduction, this is the book. It's called The Tinkering Workshop. It's a book that's written primarily for families and kids. We say ages 8 to 12, but for me, that's a very broad spectrum. And I would do these activities with 3-year-olds. I would do them with 63-year-olds, maybe changing a few small things, but I wouldn't do things so differently. I also think that I hope that it is a good resource for educators working in both formal and informal settings. I'm really excited to share this with all of you who are doing maker spaces in libraries. I think that's an amazing place to work with these sorts of activities with kids. And so today I wanted to share a little bit of the behind the scenes process, do some activities together, but also make sure we have time to talk with each other and share and see um, what kind of feedback you all have for me and for each other about how these projects and these activities might look in your setting. Thanks, everyone. I know a few people are coming in and joining us, and feel free to turn on your mic, turn on your video. You don't have to if you don't want to. Feel free to use the chat if you have questions or just want to say hi, introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from. Before I get started with the more official presentation, I just wanted to introduce kind of a starter activity from the book. This is something that we have as like the first project in the book, and the idea is to build your own construction set using any two materials that you happen to have around. The reason why we use two materials is because I feel that once you have a lot of a couple different things, they start to become a bit of a system. You start to be able to have a conversation with those parts and see what they can do and what you can do with them. So just as a starting point, this was one of the materials we have on the list, but I have a bunch of clothespins in front of me. I have a bunch of straws. I also like these two materials because like every straw and every clothespin are slightly different sizes. They work together in different ways. So I would just encourage you, maybe as we're talking, as we're chatting, if you have these materials with you, to just start experimenting with them, just start putting them together and seeing what are different ways you can connect them. You could start to build a lot of the same kind of structure. I think that could be an interesting way to build. And you also could experiment with like different ways of connecting the clothespins to the straws. So for example, here I've clipped it on, and here you could also just like use it like a sleeve and slide it over the end of the clothespins. And there are other ways of connecting it, but just yeah, I wanted to invite everyone, whether you're here or whether you're joining recording, to start building as well while we're talking. Do you all have any, like, who brought some materials to the meeting? Yay, Lisa, I see you. Ken, I know you did. I could guarantee there's some other stuff behind you. And again, this will be recording, so this is also an invitation that is very low stakes and is something that you all could do on your own after the workshop, or it's also something that I would recommend even for a more fun experience to bring these materials on a table with a few of your colleagues or a few of the visitors to your library and start building together, just so you can kind of test out what a initial exploration might look like. So I think with that, I'm going to, oh, are there any questions at this moment? Okay, great. Well, so I'm gonna share my screen and just talk through a little bit about myself, about the book, and how some of these ideas might relate to uh, education settings and working with kids and adults in libraries. Um, and yes, oh, maybe I will do the schedule for the workshop today. And I'm actually going to switch these two things, but So we can start building with the 2 item construction set. Um, I want to have time that we do a compass points, that we do a reflection about tinkering in libraries. But actually, I'm going to switch these 2 things, and I'm going to do that after we've talked about the book. I think that makes more sense. Then we'll have another 15 minutes or so to have some time starting to dive into one of the projects in the book, and then we'll have a short reflection at the very end of the session. And here's the behind the scenes photo of us doing the photo shoot for the book. There will be lots of these sprinkled throughout the presentation, just so you can get a sense of what it looked like behind the scenes when we were experimenting with these projects and putting them into the into this format. But I think I'll start with just a quick introduction to how I define tinkering and what it means to me in a learning environment. So, the first part of tinkering is that it combines art, science, and technology in a way that it's hard to tell exactly where the edges of those different categories are. So you could start exploring an artistic phenomena, you could move into doing science, you could have the opposite interaction where you start with an engineering challenge and then you try to make something artistic out of it. I think that one of the key characteristics of combining these different disciplines, these different subjects, is that it introduces a lot of new ideas and unexpected ideas. And so for me, in this sort of tinkering project, this is building art robots using batteries, markers, motors, and paint, a few other things. There's a prompt, there's a playground, there's some materials that drive you towards these art, science, and technology explorations. But as the facilitator, as the person setting up the activity, I don't know exactly what the outcomes will be. And I am open to new things and surprises as people explore these things, these parts in their own ways. I think it's really important to say that tinkering broadens out the learning goals of a project, a program, or an activity. So I think it's important to recognize that there are content areas that we're exploring. So when we are connecting circuits and switches and batteries and light bulbs, there are a lot of, let's say, scientific content that people discover about what is a circuit, what is a short circuit, what are the different ways that you can connect lights, how do you add a switch into your system. So that's definitely part of the exploration, and it's something that is in the activity, but it's not the only part of the activity. There's also the process learning that happens. So there's lots of chances that people have to authentically go through the process of doing science or making art. They get to ask questions, they get to make observations, they test out ideas, even if they're not sure if they're going to work or not. They notice again whether what they tried worked or didn't. They share with others. They go through this process and hopefully they do it again and again and again every time they grab a new, stuffed animal paw or musical element from the table. They have more and more practice going through this process. And then finally, I think the other really important learning aspect that tinkering addresses is the social and emotional part of learning. So it's also really important in these experiences that people are able to um, feel confident in their abilities, that they develop a sense of agency, that they begin to feel comfortable testing or trying things out. And I think these are really important things to consider. And of course, not every interaction will hit all of these topics, but I think these are all learning goals that are embedded in the activity. And so they're all different directions that the facilitator or the instructor, the teacher can work towards within the activities. And then finally, I would just say that in my general experience, tinkering has a mix of facilitation. So the people who are setting up the activity, it has a mix of a prompt, so materials, examples, a provocative question to ask, and also an environment that you're working in as you are doing these projects. So just a little bit about where I got started doing tinkering. So I worked for about 10 years at the Exploratorium Science Center in San Francisco, which you can see in the top right corner here. And together with a team, I worked on a space called the Tinkering Studio, which is a drop-in makerspace learning environment in the museum where people can slow down, use tools, build their own projects. Um, about 7 years ago, I started a studio called Wonderful Idea Company with another Exploratorium exhibit developer. And through that, have been able to do lots of experiments working with schools, uh, museums, libraries, festivals, seeing how these sorts of tinkering projects can expand, can contract, can change and adapt and be remixed across a wide variety of settings. Um, there's always the sense of prototyping things with the learners. So on the bottom right here, you can see testing out a large art machine dance floor where kids could work and build together. And I think every time I set up an activity, there's something different, something that changes, something that we learn from doing this. I've had the chance to travel all over the world and do these projects. So this is a picture of kids in Kuwait building art machines, and I've been really gratified to find that this style of playful, learner-centric education is something that's really exciting to people across all kinds of different countries and areas. And so it's something that has been also another learning experience about what it's like to bring these projects and materials and tools to work with kids in Kuwait, to work with teachers in Texas, to work with Tibetan monks in the north of India, kind of all setting up the projects in a similar way and seeing what people do. And maybe I should have said this at the very beginning, but I'm currently living in Freiburg, Germany. I've been here for about 4 years. This is a workshop I did actually with Ken, who's on the call right now. So this is like, I didn't even know he was going to be here. So this is an amazing plug. Ken is an artist from a group called the Secret Club in Denmark and is also featured in the Tinkering Workshop book. And this is a workshop that we did together in Freiburg, Germany, where we brought together teachers, educators, artists, people who worked in maker spaces, people who worked in classrooms, and just started playing and doing activities together and try to build a community to share and promote this type of learning. And so that's a big project that I'm doing right now, is trying to move to a new environment and understand what are the people and the institutions that can support this kind of tinkering approach. So I'll just go pretty fast through some of these behind the scenes shots of the book, but I think it's nice to share a little bit about the process of putting that together. About a little more than 2 years ago, I was approached by the publishing company called Story, and an editor there who wanted to get started thinking about how to set up a book that captures some of this tinkering approach. As I said earlier, I feel that for me, there were some challenges that I saw right away. I mean, one is that this doesn't have a human facilitator that's there with you. You know, we don't know what sort of environment or space people will be working in. And as well, what I mentioned a second ago about how every time I set up an activity, I do something a little bit different or change or prototype or iterate. You know, there's something that a book is a finished product. So that I think there were these challenges that we recognized in the beginning. But as we were talking through and trying to figure out what kind of topics, what kind of format, what way of organizing the book, we made some attempts to try to put some of these learning values into this book and have that be a way to express what we care about when it comes to learning through tinkering. Um, and yeah, we had kind of the biggest push of work was a 5-day photo shoot that took place at the publisher's headquarters, which is at a museum in Western Massachusetts called Mass MoCA, which is kind of an amazing place to be while you're doing these projects. I worked with lots of, I think we had 5 or 6 kids who were coming in to do the projects, use the tools. You know, as much as I could, I tried to make it like facilitating a project. Of course, you know, in this environment, you know, I think they had to do everything like 8 times and like make minuscule movements to the right and the left. So, I mean, it was not exactly the same, but as much as possible, we tried to have the kids also engage in the tinkering project process as they were working. And just maybe one more thing that's interesting about this picture is that this is like a rough draft that we had as we were working on the book. So there was kind of this huge printed binder of, in general, what kind of photos, what kind of shots we thought we needed. And so we had this as a guide. We also were flexible in trying different things out. So I think the first aspect that we came to for this book is to feature everyday materials, things that are accessible, things that are cheap, things that people probably already have around, whether it's a garage or a workshop or office or classroom. So a lot of the materials that we featured were things like wire, clothespins, googly eyes, straws, wire, cardboard, recycled materials. So I think it's really important that to do a tinkering project, you don't need specialized equipment, you don't need a fancy kit, but it's more about the process you go through with the materials you have around you. The second thing that I really wanted to emphasize with the book was this idea of having multiple examples. So I think a more traditional uh, guidebook or activity book is like, or a cookbook is like, follow the steps, do these things, and then your finished piece will look like this photo. And one of the things that we tried to do was for the pages that show what the projects are, have multiple versions of them, and hopefully not that people will choose which one of these to make, but they'll see, okay, there's 3 different versions, and I'll make the fourth, and I'll make the fifth, and I'll make the sixth. And we have for all of the projects a way to go deeper. So, bringing in different materials and different techniques and different tools. So I think this idea that there are wide walls to these activities, that there are lots of different outcomes, and trying to figure out a way how to support that in the book. One more thing that I think is really important that we tried to do as we were putting together this project was to have photos of the kids working with the materials, testing things out, connecting the wires, using a multimeter. Again, I think the impulse sometimes is to just show um, the maker, the tinkerer, like smiling with the finished product, the thing that works and it looks beautiful. And as much as we could, we wanted to shift that so it was more about showing the process and more about showing the steps that you take to get to something that you are proud of and you feel good with. And so I love this one because it's like really testing out the parts, and there's this kind of tinkering tongue action where he's so kind of focused on making these small adjustments to the weights of this kind of wave mechanism. And these were the type of photos that we wanted to show where kids were in the process of making of the things. Um, we have artists who are sharing their work. So there's ways to go deeper by emulating and working from remixing what different artists are doing. And then I think the last thing I'll share is just that as we were building the book, we also wanted to have this sense of flexibility, prototyping, tinkering. So a couple ones I like are this kaleidoscope where you see the photographer taking a picture of the girl who's building the kaleidoscope. And this is something I just took randomly on my cell phone using a spare kaleidoscope part, and that got included in the book. Or this paper circuit cardboard city project where like the kids and the designers and the photographers were all coming up with new ideas. Like, what if we had a street light? What if we had a gaffer's tape as a road? What if we added King Kong to the background? What if one of the houses was having a disco party? And just having this feeling that there was possibility and new ideas in there. So this is a few of the spreads of the book, just so you can get a sense of what the project pages look like, where there is, a small section that is getting started, where you have a few initial steps, but then the majority of the project is suggestions, tips, questions, like moral support, saying like, hey, this is pretty hard. I think one of these says like, it's pretty hard to tape things when they start getting wet. So, don't worry if it's not working perfectly, just keep trying and try different methods out. And then these two show the this kind of idea of going deeper, where there's lots of different projects and different ideas. So I think with that, yeah, I'm curious if people have any specific questions about tinkering, or about the process of putting together the book. Well, I think maybe some of these will come out as we do our next activity. So I've done a little bit of work tinkering in libraries, but I would say that it's not the majority of my experience. So I'm also really curious to be working with all of you and get a chance to see how you all work in maker spaces. What about tinkering might resonate with what you're already doing? And so a way that I like to organize these sorts of conversations, I use a lot this There's a group at the Harvard Graduate School of Education called Project Zero. I'll put the link in the chat in a second once we start writing. But they do what's called thinking routines. And those are just ways of organizing a conversation visually that I found opens up lots of different ways of thinking about a topic. So I would like to do that with you all about tinkering in libraries. We're going to kind of split it up. So we're going to do a part now, a part at the end of the session, and then we're even going to do the last part in the second workshop, which is going to take place in 2 weeks. So I'll kind of lead you through all that. But the first thing you need to do is you need to just draw a circle on a piece of paper if you have something to write with and something to write on. And then you make an X through the paper. So you have 4 sections, and these are like the 4 sections of the compass. So there's north, there's south, there's east, and there's west. Cool. Does everyone have something like that? Just give a thumbs up on your, or you can even, yeah, cool. Awesome. Cool. Yes, I see. Yeah, people holding it up. Yay, cool. Virtual thumbs up. So I want to do now these first two sections. And we start with the E, which is what excites you about doing tinkering in libraries or in your specific library makerspace? What are some things that are exciting to you? And so maybe just we'll spend a couple minutes writing those down, and then we'll share them in the chat. You can write multiple things. Cool. And hold on to them for just 1 second. It's fine, Kelly, no worries. But what you could do is you could actually type that into the chat box, like type in something that you wrote that excites you about tinkering in libraries, and wait to press the enter button, and we'll all press enter at the same time so we can do kind of see all of our thoughts appear. I'll write something too. Okay, does everyone have something in the chat? Something that excites you? Yay. Cool. All right, so let's press enter and see what we have. Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, yeah, that looks great. So I think I see beginning steps. I see push thinking in new directions, playfulness. I like Julie shopping for all the supplies. Yeah, that's good. I think we all need people who shop for all the supplies and also find excitement to organize the supplies. And then, yeah, I think this idea of um, parents' excitement, collaboration would have, I mean, these relationships that develop as we are working on these projects, I think that's also really, really valuable. So, thanks. I think after the exciting, the East section, I think it's also important to put down the West section, the W, which is what worries do you have? Like, what is worrisome to you about tinkering in your library setting? So, what worries do you have? And I would suggest again, like if people are following along this call after the fact, feel free to do this alongside us, and we'll put a page on the Library Makers website where we can share and populate these ideas also with the thoughts of the people who are joining asynchronously as well. Okay. We'll wait a couple minutes. You can write a few down and you can pick yeah, pick a few to write into the chat. Okay, so if you have something, let's I'll press enter at the same time. Have it written in there. Okay, okay. Yeah, will people come? Will they like it? Something new? The age groups that come. Yeah, and I think this idea of, I mean, I see like what Yvonne and what Lisa like different ways of coming at this idea that like if it's either seems too complex or if it doesn't seem so clear what are the steps to get from starting points to uh, and parts of the projects, how people respond to that. So does anybody want to unmute and say something a bit more about one of your excitements or worries that you have?
I'll go ahead and add something.
Thanks, Kelly.
No problem. uh, I One of the things I just kind of got into STEAM like within the last year of working with younger STEAM programming, and I was more on the art side with it, and like I love hands-on creating, and this kind of like gives you a chance to do some hands-on creating with it as well as like fun ways just to learn something
Mm,
and I think that's the probably the most exciting thing that I can probably think of for that.
mm. Yeah, and I think this idea that when you're having fun, when you're being playful, that I found that that's when the most learning happens because you are open to the experience. You are able to try something new. You feel comfortable to take a risk. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, that's really what learning is to try something that you're not sure if it will work or not, and then either have that confirmed or see that you need to make a change or do something different. So cool. Anyone else wants to share either something they were thinking about a little bit more in terms of either the excitements or the worries?
Oh,
Go ahead, Lisa. Yeah.
about the worry, I think that was mine about the project won't like
Yeah.
shut down when there's not like a clear path. So I appreciated like a little bit when you were talking about your book and some of the photos you took that it shows the process or shows different ways, different models of what something could be and just thinking about, I don't know, when it's appropriate to have that model or show that picture right in the process and things like that
Yeah.
to help people that might be struggling. I don't know. I guess it's more of a comment and maybe a question to you if you've thought about that too and you have any advice for the group.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think it's again something that we always have to prototype and test out. I think the examples that we show are really important. So I think showing examples that are um, kind of crappy enough that kids don't get intimidated by them, and they see it as something like, okay, I get what we're supposed to be doing here, but actually I could make something better or more complex or more interesting or more beautiful. I think that's really helpful. Um, and then I also think, and then again, what I said with the book, like having multiple examples is always helpful. But yeah, for sure, I've had this experience where, we had like brilliant volunteers or facilitators that made things that were just too good, and all the kids wanted to make that exact thing, and it was just too hard. And then I would just say, like, and you know, haven't found this for every activity, but I think the way you describe what people are doing is really makes a big difference. So I think if you say like we're built like, oh, do you want to come here and build a cardboard automata? Like that says something about what you're doing in space. If you come and you say like, hey, we're messing around with these kind of crank powered toys. Do you want to explore these with us? That's a different invitation. And so I think that refining those initial interactions, like what you say when someone comes in the space, I think that sometimes can also set the tone of whether or not it's okay to make mistakes, or whether or not it's okay just to try things out and not be so focused on coming up with the perfect example at the end. But yeah, it's definitely something that's always a challenge, and it's definitely something that I am, uh, at least I was kind of terrified about, putting these things in the book, because once they're written down, you don't have that ability to prototype and test. And I mean, I think the experience that I've had working at the Exploratorium, working at the Science Center is not like be in a room and spend like 3 weeks coming up with that perfect prompt, but it's like saying one thing to you, Lisa, and one thing to Kelly, and one thing to Ken, and one thing to Yvonne, and like just experimenting with different ways of bringing these things up. And so I think that's the way that either the examples or the prompts get defined in the best way. So thanks. Yeah, that's really helpful. And keep the questions and the comments coming in the chat as well. We have just, well, I think we're more or less on time. So I wanted to spend a little bit more time exploring mechanisms with you all, if you have some of these materials about. This is a project from the book that is about exploring linkages. And so I thought that we could just work for the next 15 minutes or so using these parts, experimenting, trying things out. Probably you'll need more time. Like, I think this will take more than 15 minutes, but I think our time together, we can get started, and we can share a little bit about what the process is like. So some of the materials that I have, it's pretty, again, it's like pretty simple and things that you might already have. So there's cardboard, and I just cut some pieces of boxes, or if you have boxes around. There are these, they're not really glow in the dark. They're just oops, brass paper fasteners. And then I think the only other thing we need at the starting point is scissors to cut the pieces. And so do people have some of these things? Yeah, I see some people nodding. Well, I'm just gonna work on doing kind of the starting point for this from the book, and then maybe we can have some time trying and experimenting. If you want to do something different as we're building, that's totally fine as well. But yeah, like a linkage is just a mechanism that changes or amplifies or has one input and one output. And so there's lots of different kinds. I found the most easy starting point is what's called a 4-bar linkage. And so it just has 4 little pieces of cardboard. They can be any size, they can be any thickness. One thing that's helpful is to look at the corrugation, like the grain of the cardboard. And like these pieces are much stronger when the grain is like going up and down, if that makes sense. Like they're just more stiff in that direction. So I'm just going to cut off 4 pieces. You can do the same if you have these pieces in front of you.
I'm just going to share a quick comment from the chat.
Go
Ken
ahead.
says that in Denmark that those are actually called soldiers' legs, which is interesting.
The cardboard corrugation or the linkages?
um, you might have to be more specific with that.
This part, Ken? The brass. Oh, the brass clips. Oh, cool. Yeah, because they're sort of the little characters like that. That's nice. Yeah, I like one day I would really love to do like a glossary of all these different parts and all the different languages and what they're called, and so interesting. So I just make kind of 2 pieces that are like X's with one brad in the middle, or one soldier's leg in the middle. Again, it doesn't have to be in the middle. Like this one, I'm actually just going to do it a little bit further out just for fun to see what happens. I'm also not an expert at mechanisms or linkages, so it's possible that what we do won't work exactly as planned in the beginning. And so like one kind of like starting point linkage is this one that's called a 4-bar linkage because it has 4 pieces. And to make it, you just take your 2 X's and you start to put them together.
Ryan,
Once
can
you
I
have,
interrupt you and ask a question?
yeah,
Do you have any tips for getting the brass clips through the cardboard, especially for like younger kids?
yeah, I would say to do yeah, I wish I had it here. It's like 10 o'clock at night, so I'm working in the darkened room, so not in the workshop, but an awl, which is like it's a tool, it's called like AWL. And then if you poke your awl down into a foamy piece, I can show you in the book actually. Um, Here. So like if you so like this is the awl, it's kind of like a pokey piece, and then this is a piece of wood and a piece of foam that's on top of that. And so kind of poking down into the piece of foam is a good way where you have something that has a bit of give and and yeah, it makes a pretty nice clean hole. I mean, you could also use like a pen or a pencil. A small Phillips head screwdriver would work really well. And yeah, like I think just this little, like it's really just a piece of scrap wood with a piece of scrap foam on there that helps because it just gives you something to poke into. Yeah, and we tried, I didn't mention this in the thing, but in the presentation, but you know, we do have this section in the beginning of the book that's like it's like how to set up a tinkering station, you know, using scissors, using tape, using utility knives, glue guns, soldering irons, pliers, drills. So there's some of this idea around like what are some tips and tricks around you know, how to use that safely with kids, and also how to uh, let's say facilitate teaching someone how to use a tool like a utility knife or an awl.
And Tammy just mentioned in the chat, how about a small Phillips head screwdriver?
Yeah, that would work. That would work super. That would work really well. And yeah, and I feel like again, this is kind of what I was saying about the adapting the projects for different ages and different groups. I think that like, yeah, maybe for older kids, you want this like pokey awl that is, it's like a more precise tool. Um, Maybe for like middle, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9, like maybe the Phillips head screwdriver is like a little bit less sharp. Maybe for even younger kids, you have a, even uh, pencil or blunter tool that still works. Just like you can do these things with different levels of like precision versus I don't even want to say safety, but like potential risk, or maybe just how much facilitation you need to show someone how to use those tools, depending on the age. So this is kind of the one of the starting point linkages. And what I suggest to do in the next 3 or 4 minutes, but also after the course, is just to start changing things, like just to start trying to say like, okay, well, what if instead of this being in the middle, what if it's over on the side? Yeah, that's cool. Also, Tammy is saying a cardboard punch could work, like a hole punch. There's also specific hole punches that are really good for cardboard. So yeah, like that's the cool thing about these projects is there's not like necessarily one way to do them. And I also think like sharing and finding these things. I mean, that's why this library's maker group is so great. I mean, I already have participated and seen some of these conversations that people have that are like, yeah, so I'm just going that are like, oh, what kind of kits do you use to teach someone soldering? And then you have like 6 different ideas. And I think that's really, really valuable because again, we learn so much about these activities by trying them and sharing the things that we do.
Hey
So
Ryan,
yeah.
when I prep a prod activity like this, sometimes I wonder how much of pre-prep I should be doing. Like, should I be making these holes ahead of time, or sometimes like, is it too much? Should I just? But sometimes when they come in, like they don't know
Yeah.
what to do, and like, where is that sweet spot where you prep enough or give enough time?
I mean, I
Or
think yeah, that's a great question. I mean, again, like, I don't think there's like an exact right answer to that. I would say, yeah, it definitely depends on how much time you have. So, if you have a limited amount of time, maybe cutting out the parts that are not crucial to the activity. So, like, I would say that for this, like, actually being able to poke a hole yourself and change the hole yourself, like, that's pretty crucial to the activity because that is what lets you try new things and experiment. Whereas, like, it's not necessary that learning how to use a utility knife and cut the pieces could be a good skill, but it might not be the most important part of the activity. So like that's how I would make the decision between what prep to do and what not to do. But I think like like things that are going to lead them to try new things and do more experiments, I would try to get them to do, if that makes sense. Um, Sometimes it's kind of related, but sometimes we talk about like productive frustration versus unproductive frustration. And this idea that like sometimes people are frustrated in the projects because they're trying to do something that they want to do that they don't quite know yet how. And figuring it out for themselves is going to be the thing that gets them excited about the activity and is the learning moment. Sometimes if the parts just don't fit together and they're struggling so hard just to cut the pieces, like that might not be the crucial part of the activity and they might get frustrated, but not in a way that's leading them towards new discoveries. So those are just the kind of things that I would think about. Cool. Ken, I see you're totally going beyond the Zoom window, so that's awesome there. I knew you would be doing that. I just wanted to show like because we don't have so much time and I want to be respectful of where people are at. Uh, I just want to show you one that I was working on earlier today. I have to back up a little bit. So this is just another experiment with the linkages. I added a wheel, and then I just started kind of playing around, putting different pieces here, and I can see if I can. So this is kind of like a little walking character. I didn't know what this would be when I started making it. And I think I mean, to me, like that's kind of the sweet spot that you want to get into, is this mode where you're like, okay, what if I put this here? What if I put this here? Oh, now maybe this is a mouth. Oh, now maybe this is like, maybe some hanging feet could work. And I think that like that back and forth between experimenting with the mechanism and also thinking about character or story is a really neat way to be thinking about these projects. Cool. Well, does anyone else want to share what they're working on? It doesn't have to be finished or done, but it'd be cool to see. Yeah, 10 people are requesting that you show what you're doing. Wow. Oh, that's awesome. Well, and I really like it because it's super clear that there are 3 of these 4-bar linkages in there, no? Like there's, or maybe even more, maybe 4 of these X's.
Yeah, 4.
Yeah.
But going to the sides and
Yeah.
then rather than extending it. I mean, if you've never done one of these before, it is awesome to just do them really long.
Yeah.
That is so
Like
much
this
fun.
cartoonish
Yeah, with a boxing glove at the end.
But I mean, I really like too, like even just seeing that, makes me think it could be like a costume or something. Like it looks like
Yeah, it
wings
has a
coming
mask,
off, or like a
like,
mask.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's the other nice thing about these projects, is that they can lead to making masks, making costumes, making I don't know, a play or a skit or an animation, stop motion animation. New projects can get suggested out of them.
Yeah. Sorry to butt in. Something I really liked about the one you showed before was that it also had this secondary movement that you don't influence. The legs are
Yeah.
I mean, that's just gravity, really. And
Yeah.
that's great. That's great to have that. I think Jim Henson used that a lot in the Muppets, like to have like hair that sort of moved
Yeah,
but wasn't puppeteered.
yeah, and I mean, I think it's just feeling comfortable, and like, I mean, as much as we can do in these short nuggets that we have with people who work with us at the library or school, but it's like, how do people feel comfortable to say, okay, like there's some qualities of these materials, like they can hang, they can be stuck, they can be like pivoting, and like you start to build a vocabulary of what these parts can do. And I think, at least in my experience, the best way to build that vocabulary is by experimenting and playing and just trying things. So I think we are unfortunately just about out of time. So I think what I'm actually going to do is we'll leave the whole second half of the compass for the next session, or something that you can do on your own time. And before I turn things back to Yvonne and Kelly, I just wanted to share a couple links in the chat. I'll also share these in the library makers group, but there is an educator's guide that talks a little bit about trying these activities in different settings that we put together. And then I also just wanted to share this Compass Points thinking routine if people want to learn a little bit more about that. For you all who are here today, thanks so much for joining us. And for those of you who are watching the video later on online, thanks for that as well. This is the first part of the workshop around tinkering in library settings. So we'll meet again at this same time in 2 weeks from now, on November 20th. We'll finish our compass points and we'll think more together about building with linkages and what that might look like. Kelly, Yvonne, do you want to say anything before we break?
Not sure yet, but I do want to say thank you real quick. I'm going to go ahead and bring up my screen to bring up that little mini PowerPoint thing that has the date on it. So yep, so be sure you join us for part 2 on Wednesday, November 20th. Same bat time, same bat place. Definitely.
I also just put the link to the book. Probably this is just the Amazon link, but I'm sure at the libraries there's other ways to get it for your library as well. And maybe we can think about that a little bit together, as well as some of the practical things for the next session. But yeah, thanks Yvonne, thanks Kelly for organizing, and thanks to you all for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for joining us today. So yeah, like I said, be sure you check out that book. We've ordered at our library, and I am so excited to get that coming in and practice with all this stuff. So thank you guys once again. So Yvonne posted a link in the chat. It's to our feedback survey. So let us know what you thought of this program. And we'll leave the window open up so that you guys can have a chance to click on the link and check it out, as well as clicking on the other links that Ryan shared with us. Thank you guys once again for joining us. We hope to see you guys over at librarymakers.org. It's a great place for sharing with other fellow library makers. We got a huge community there, and we are growing every single day. I keep seeing notifications that we get new members, and it's so awesome to see people collaborate and share some fun ideas with everybody. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording, and we'll leave the chat up, but we'll see you guys
Yep.
soon. Yeah.